Hey, we are live. Let's go. Three, two, one. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 143 of the Security Podcast on the In30 Network. I'm Haim Cohen. We have Tom here, and obviously, there's no news this week. Nothing whatsoever. Just lots of
We
tweets.
figured, yeah, there's lots of tweets. There's lots of funny stuff happening on Twitter. We figured we'd take this week and discuss our favorite slow cooker recipes. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I like adding tomatoes to the pot roast. Definitely some acidity from the tomatoes and tomato juice really breaks down the meat, makes it really tender. It is absolutely the secret to a perfect slow cooker pot roast.
Now, when we talk slow cookers, is your slow cooker Bluetooth enabled or IoT enabled?
No, it has one cord that goes straight to the power outlet, and that's it. Now, the lid is detachable. I don't believe there's Wi-Fi in it, but it does have a spot where I can put a Raspberry Pi.
So you can enable it.
You can. It's a do-it-yourself project, and you control the security, but if I wanted to hook, a little motor or something to turn it on or off over Wi-Fi, I could totally do that.
Well,
Get in through the VPN, and I can control high, low, or off. It's
so
very internet enabled.
So obviously we've all heard that that Wikileaks, who is a great organization, the best organization, they are doing God's work organization, as said by a certain individual, is now not happy. And there's other things. But before we start that, we did have a topic that we never covered last week. So it was a security audit of a bunch of password managers. And there were some, mainly mundane things. Yeah, there were some exploits, some things. They were all fixed before this was posted. And I guess Tom and I just want to go through it with you.
Yeah, so we'll post the show notes. There's a list of messenger apps with some reported security vulnerabilities. Now, the important part is that these were all responsibly disclosed. This team did great work. They worked with the vendors to get this stuff fixed. As of March 1st, 2017, all reported vulnerabilities have been fixed by the vendors. So, give these people a hand. There's even some names in here that I don't recognize. And they got reports, they fixed it all, they updated their apps, and this is all a good thing. And these vulnerabilities should hopefully serve some developers who will look at these and use them as examples of what not to do or how to further harden their password manager apps.
Well, let's go. I think we should at least go through the LastPass 3, the Dashlane 4, and the 1Password 5. Just real quick. So LastPass, the first one, hard-coded master key and LastPass password manager.
Yeah, so this was essentially a hard-coded master password in the app if you used the PIN functionality. What it did is it decrypted the master password. It was just not built very well. It relied on some shortcuts to use a PIN instead of the full password for the phone. You can safely use the PIN in the LastPass password manager now. That said, if someone takes your phone, the only thing they have to do is brute force the PIN instead of your master password. So you might not want that, or at the very least, set a timeout value.
I mean, I have Fingerprint, which has its other issues, but I always thought that the PIN was kind of stupid on the phone, but I understand why it was there.
Yeah, I had it enabled in the past back when I was a LastPass subscriber, and it's a huge time saver. That said, it's not very secure.
It's, I guess, who's your threat model? And generally the guy stealing the phone out of your hand while you're walking down the street is not going to sit there and brute force it. So,
right.
Okay, privacy data leakage in the LastPass browser search, which I never used the LastPass browser, but apparently it's leaking data.
Yes. So the LastPass browser was kind of a secure browser, and I don't really like that companies build in the privacy browser into their products. I mean, if you want a secure private browser, use the Tor browser bundle. It's proven, it's effective. But the data leak was the Google search autocomplete, where every key press, it would send the search query to Google for autocomplete results. Technically, yes, privacy leak. You probably, if you're a security browser, you probably shouldn't be leaking data to Google. But that was disabled.
And the third one is more leakage on a very old device, less than 4.1. So you're talking about ice cream sandwich. So we're talking like 3-4 years ago.
Right. Android as a platform always has updates to, how you can store secure data, where you would put certain files and certain things, how they get accessed. And on really old versions of Android, it looks like this was just not using a very good storage method. The workaround, if I can quote this, is as described in the section details, this attack works only on older Android versions for the LastPass app. So this seems to be the problem of the operating system and must be fixed on the OS side. There will be no updates for such an old Android version, so the best mitigation would be to buy a new device. Smiley face. And that I can completely agree with.
So, I mean, the other big one was those are the three for LastPass. And for me, none of them really affected me. And you're going to start finding out that a lot of it is all based on the fact that you're using their proprietary browser, which at this point I wouldn't necessarily use. When on Android it fills in, and I think on iOS it also fills in.
Yeah, I would always stay away from those, security browsers that come bundled with your AV or firewall or password manager. If you need a secure private browser, just install the Tor browser bundle. It even works on Android.
So next one, we can do these quick, is Dashlane. Read private data from the app folder in Dashlane Password Manager. Basically, it's the same sort of browser leakage. They implemented their own browser, and it can leak data. The other one is same idea with, I just saw it here, Google information leakage in their browser. Once again, the third one, residue attack extracting master password from Dashlane Password Manager. This seems pretty bad, but it sounds bad.
Yeah, this is definitely more of a coding change in leaving stuff left over that should be removed. But they've got a nice graph. If you want to check that out, they've got a great write-up. It is pretty technical. They do have some proof of concept code for the attack. So if you want to get down and dirty with the vulnerability, you absolutely can if you've still got an old version laying around. And then, don't install APKs willy-nilly. Please don't, unless you really know what you're doing.
And then the last one, I forgot, subdomain password leakage, internal Dashlane Password Manager browser. Again, another browser issue created by Dashlane. Go to 1Password, which is the other big one. Subdomain password leakage, basically, again, in the internal browser. So if you go to a different subdomain, so let's say you had Tumblr and you went to a different Tumblr site, within Tumblr, they're assuming that you're using your Tumblr domain rather than the subdomain.
That's a pretty nasty vulnerability.
I mean, but again, it's in their internal browser. So
right.
Let's see. It was HTTPS downgrade to HTTP in the internal browser. That's also nasty, especially if you're assuming that you're looking for that S there. Titles and URLs not encrypted in the 1Password database. I think they've always had this problem. I remember this from a while ago.
Yeah, they did fix it on the desktop version, but it looks like it surfaced in the mobile version, or at least the mobile version never got this update. So that's not a great sign.
They read private data from the app folder, again, with their built-in web browser. So once again, it's the same issue. Don't not do that. And privacy issue, information leaker to vendor 1Password Manager. I'm waiting for it to open. When the user creates a new entry containing credentials for a website, the respective target domain is leaked to the vendor's web server. That I don't understand. But again, they fixed this. and at this point you should be good. But the good news is all these password vendors, and there's a bunch here, all they were responsibly disclosed, they quickly fixed it, and this shouldn't deter you from using a password manager. These things, I mean, these were hard exploits to hit, usually because you had an old Android phone or you used their internal browser, which again most people don't do.
Yeah, I think the moral of the story here for a lot of these leaks is browsers are difficult. They're big, complicated programs that we've literally thrown our entire computing experience into. So, right now we're doing an audio video podcast that's live streaming to the world across something that was designed to show documents in bold and underlined text, sort of, and maybe background colors if you wanted to get really crazy. And we've turned it into this massive multimedia experience that can run like 3D shooter video games. And browsers are complex. They're big, giant code bases, and making them bulletproof secure is not easy. That's why there aren't more of them around. They're very difficult to build and maintain.
And every year you go to CanSec West and they're doing their Pwn to Own contest, which all three browsers all seem to fail fairly quickly. But they eventually, I mean, now they're saying Chrome is the most secure browser for the average person.
Yes. Yeah. So if you can, I know a lot of people are pretty anti-Google, especially in the information security realm. But Chrome or Chromium is still the very best browser you can use right now.
So, I mean, that was the last story of last week that we wanted to get a hold of while we were talking about Cloud Bleed and everything else. But the next thing that happened at the same time that this, and we're going to get to the WikiLeaks and CIA story, is that Brian Krebs again on Krebs at Security broke that payments giant Verifone got breached. So a whole bunch of credit card information and everything else, point of sale terminals, all had a vulnerability and had their data leaked.
So I actually just read about this story, like just now when it got put in the show notes, because this completely missed my radar with all of everything else going on recently. So yeah, this is pretty huge. I mean, Verifone is a giant payments processor.
The good news is that nobody cares. Right now, nobody cares, which is really unfortunate. And while you're looking at this, I was explaining to my students about what WikiLeaks did. And I said, hey, guys, I know nobody cares about security. I mean, if you're following me on Facebook, I keep on saying, this is what's going on. And then at the end, I just deleted this post because nobody cares about security. And unfortunately, it's sad, but true. But anyway, so they get hacked. So you're not going to see this anywhere. That a big payment processor, credit card information, personal identifiable information, all is somehow leaked. So
it looks like the general theory is that this attack looks like another attack from a organized crime group that uses Microsoft Office files with macros enabled. Now, you do have to trick the user in clicking, enable editing or enable macros to run this stuff. And these, I don't want to call it phishing, but these malicious emails that trick users into doing this stuff are really effective, especially if it looks like a business document. If you go to, I think it's decentsecurity.com, it's a site that InfoSec Taylor Swift runs. She's actually got a guide to disabling Office macros, which is just awesome. If you can do that in group policy and you can say, hey, Office macros, across the board are now banned. They're just gone. And I know finance departments probably won't be able to enable those. Like, you may have to have an exception group, but as many people as possible, you need to keep them from running Office macros, because these things can do really, really nasty damage. They can really, as we see here, really cause your company some problems and cost some money. So disabling Office macros should be high on your list of things to do in IT.
And then lastly, before we move on, Amazon hands over Echo murder data. So I don't know if we talked about this a few weeks ago. Some guy potentially is being arrested for murder, and the three-letter agency, the FBI, is subpoenaing Amazon, and Amazon's fighting back, and they're saying we're not giving you any of the Echo data. And that was their defense was the Echo has a First Amendment right, or somebody has a First Amendment right. Turns out the guy eventually just recently said, hey, yes, you can take it in order to prove my innocence. So this battle will now not happen.
Yeah, on one hand, I don't see how Amazon has any legal standing in their side of the case at all. I mean, I am not a lawyer. I am not paid as highly as Amazon's lawyers, and I'm sure they are the top-notch people in the business. But I think that argument is pretty shaky, at least to my, not trained, just a human, not a lawyer ears. But, the fact that they were willing to fight on behalf of their user does make me feel good. I mean, that's a good thing that they didn't just roll over and say, yeah, here's all the guy's information, go for it. By the way, would you like to listen in on his house? The fact that companies, namely Apple, now Amazon, are standing up to law enforcement and saying, no, you've got to have a better reason than this, and we're going to take you to court and fight this. That's a good thing. If these companies are going to take and snarf and store and analyze more and more of our data and more of our lives, having them on our side in legal battles is a good thing.
Well, the last thing Amazon wants, if you want to go from a purely monetary point of view, is that this lands on the front page where Amazon just hands it over and people say, wait a second. So we're bringing these circular discs into our house that's going to remember all of this stuff. And then now we're all of a sudden, we're just giving all this information to Amazon. I don't know if I want to do this.
Yeah, this is one of the rarest instances where, what's good for the consumer, what's good for PR, and what's good for shareholders all align perfectly on this one issue.
So I mean, I really do want to see a very large company take on the three-letter agencies with this. We're talking both sides have an obscene amount of money to fight this. And I mean, I really hope I was hoping it was Apple, because I mean, Apple has $200 billion in the bank. And I keep famously saying, I don't know how much the FBI costs, but I bet you may put you can buy a majority stakehold in the FBI with $200 billion.
Probably.
So, I mean, yeah.
Speaking of, not to deter us from our biggest news story, but did you see that a court case was dropped recently because I believe the FBI did not want to disclose a vulnerability in the Tor browser used to find a child pornographer. So they're going to let a child pornographer go,
yes,
and drop the case to keep their hack safe and secret, because otherwise it would have to be disclosed as evidence.
And now we all know that there's an exploit in the Tor browser.
Right. So people, the Tor project is clamoring all over, trying to find yet another way to break out of the Tor browser and find a person's local IP address. So they're doing their part to try to keep us safe. But the fact that law enforcement isn't going to put, what basically amounts to a convicted criminal, right? Because the case was dropped, he's not convicted. But for all intents and purposes, we kind of know that, right? The fact that they dropped the case because they didn't want it to their exploit to end up in discovery, that's shady. That's borderline evil, is where I'd put that.
And like I said, now we know that there's an exploit in Tor. Which I mean,
well, in the Tor browser, not necessarily the network itself, but the Tor browser is typically, the escapes have been, if you have JavaScript enabled, there's some issue with Firefox's JavaScript parsing where it breaks out of the sandbox, and Firefox is not as secure as Chrome. If you were rebuilding the Tor browser today, you'd probably do so with Chromium, but it's kind of the wagon, or the horse the wagon is hitched to right now. So you've got to try to keep it up to date.
Well, But now let's go in. So WikiLeaks, I think Tuesday night, no, Monday night, Tuesday morning, depending on your time zone, released something called Vault 7, which is I want to say 9 terabytes, but I don't not 9 gigabytes, a very large amount of information of the CIA. And they go into vulnerabilities and exploits, and even as esoteric as Japanese face emoji symbols. And they have all these documents. Tom went further in and complained about their versioning control system and this system and their help ticket system. But so I'll let Tom explain exactly what they found and what we should do about it.
So, as a person in our WhatsApp security group that you can and should join, find us on Twitter, email us, or I guess you can find us on WhatsApp, and we will let you in. But as a person in our WhatsApp group said, this is evidence that the CIA hates their employees. The CIA has deployed the Atlassian suite, which is a set of enterprise tools. They've got like a wiki sort of thing called Confluence, and the search is just awful. They've got Jira, which is a like bug tracker, issue tracker that can become like management hell of 17 million different buttons to click before you're allowed to do anything. It's amazing. It's a great product. And then Stash, which silently corrupts your code without telling you, which is absolutely wonderful. But yeah, so they're using that. This looks like a dump from Confluence, their wiki-ish product. And they've got everything from personal user pages to project pages to, this is what this project or program or exploit is supposed to do. Here's when it's used. Now, WikiLeaks has retained most of the code until they can safely release it. They've been pretty quiet on this, so they're either working with vendors to get stuff fixed before they release it. They said we don't want to inadvertently bomb the internet with malware, which is pretty nice. That said, it is sort of out of character for WikiLeaks to redact things and then say they're redacting them.
This could be that they're talking to their lawyers to find out what actual things they could find. I mean, they have sources and everything else that they're going to hide behind. But I think releasing the code violates copyright and everything else. And
well, actually, it doesn't. So one interesting thing to come out of this is it looks like the exploits, the 0 days, a lot of these projects were unclassified. They're uncontrolled documents. And when the United States federal government creates something and it's not classified, that work is automatically put into the public domain. It's not copywritten or owned by anyone. Now, I'm sure some lawyer somewhere can find a way around this, but from what I understand, it means that by the mere fact that this data is released doesn't mean anyone has done anything wrong, right? Now, some of the wiki pages were classified, so clearly someone is at fault. But for the code itself, for the projects that are being used against other nations themselves, releasing that information is completely legal. And here's why. If you put classified information onto another nation's computers, technically, even as a spy, technically you are mishandling classified documents. You can be prosecuted, and it is a bad thing. It's against the rules. It's against the law. So if you're, a CIA spy and you're installing classified malware onto a system, technically you're putting classified data somewhere you're not supposed to. So their thought process was, we'll just unclassify it. We get rid of all the issues. We get rid of all the legal questions. It's unclassified documents. Now they're secret, right? You're not supposed to just shove them around the internet, but they're unclassified, so you can deploy them where you see fit. So it's really interesting how legally this will shake out.
But the one thing that we do want to explain to people is that they are using exploits in smart TVs to essentially listen in on conversations. The good news is that they're not doing it as a blanket statement. They're doing it targeted. Same thing with phones with exploits. But what that once again, smart TVs are a bad idea. If we got anything from it, smart TVs are bad.
They've got a nice exploit, which the TV will look like it's off. Everything will say the TV is turned off, but that mic is hot, it's live, and it's transmitting, it's pretty cool stuff that they've got built here. There's some privilege escalation vulnerabilities. There's some stuff where it basically hijacks some of the portable applications. It's okay, they're safe, you can download them, but it replaces some of the DLLs inside, so it looks like you're playing a game of Tetris, but in the background, it's snarfing through and grabbing all the files on that local computer. So if you're an embedded spy, you can play Tetris on the job while spying for the CIA. It's some pretty cool spy stuff.
I mean, a lot of what they were saying was, and the sad thing is, the very simple thing is just to keep everything updated. I mean, the problem with smart TVs is nobody updates smart TVs. However, my Roku box gets updated, my Chromecast gets updated, my Amazon Fire TV gets updated. So again, it's another knock into, if you're going to buy something, you have to make sure that they're going to put upgrade paths to it.
So what this means, and we did get this question early on in the WhatsApp group that you should join, for what does this mean for the average consumer? What do I need to do to protect myself? And the good news is, the internet's not filled with 0 days right now. We're probably not going to see the effect of the code release until it happens, and that all depends on whether or not it gets fixed before WikiLeaks drops the code on everyone. Chances are you don't have to do anything. Right? The vendors who need to fix stuff will fix stuff. Keep your apps up to date. Use a password manager. If you're going to buy a TV, don't buy a smart TV. At the very least, don't buy one with a microphone. That's a bad idea. Or a camera. And just do all the regular stuff. What we did see, which was interesting, and we probably should take a little bit of time and talk about the confusion around WhatsApp, Signal, and the like.
I was just going to bring up the fake news surrounding all of this right now.
Yeah. Go ahead and dive into that, and then I'll tack stuff on.
So the first thing we hear is Signal on WhatsApp is broken. That's the headline. And I'm doing this now on my personal Facebook site. And when you click the headline, it's really clickbaity. They're saying, no. Signal and WhatsApp are not broken. They can't break the encryption. But if there's an exploit on your phone before it gets encrypted, then yes, they can get it. So if you rooted your phone and they have an exploit against you, or you downloaded a faulty APK or whatever it is, and they're capturing data on your phone before it gets encrypted, yes, that's how they're compromising the Signal data. On the other hand, looking over your shoulder while you're typing it out is the exact same idea, except they're inside your phone. And the problem is that the news media, journalists are not security experts. So they're telling you what they find, but they don't understand what it is. What you need to do is go to the primary sources. Moxie already updated the WhatsApp blog, not the WhatsApp blog, but he's on Twitter saying, no, this is not it. The New York Times issued a retraction or a correction saying, no, the pre-encryption things. But there are sites that are still saying it. The Guardian was a very famous example. They're usually really good about this stuff, and they've since corrected it, but they're saying, oh, it can get it. Slate.com I saw today. Slate is reporting WikiLeaks says the CIA can quote unquote bypass secure messaging apps. When you click on it, it doesn't say that they can do it. It just says that when it's unencrypted, they can get it. New York Times, I said. And there was another one, Softpedia, which I've heard of before, but not really. They're saying
they're not a great source for this stuff.
So CNN, of all of them, actually had a really fantastic article this morning where they actually talked to Moxie. And they're saying, look, if you basically use Signal, that Signal or anything, look for the word Signal protocol when looking for your encrypted messaging app.
I'm really happy that slowly but surely the word is spreading, and it's becoming, I wouldn't call it common knowledge, but in articles that talk about how to communicate securely, people are starting to say WhatsApp and Signal more and more and more. And the other things are slowly falling out of the ecosystem and out of people's vernacular. And that just makes me incredibly happy, because those apps deserve to be on top, and they're kind of clawing their way there. So the big news in the CIA's, all the documents relating to WhatsApp and Signal and things that use the WhatsApp protocol, is the CIA has deemed it easier to hack the phone itself, to hack the operating system, to get you to install something, to basically rootkit your device and watch the screen and watch the stuff that you're typing. That is easier than breaking the Signal protocol that powers WhatsApp and Signal. It is easier to hack the phone and rootkit it than it is to break the encryption that those apps use. And that's great. That is the, from someone trying to break your application, that's the highest level of praise, is to say, it's probably just easier to rootkit this thing and be done with it. So it's actually good news.
It's, again, it goes back to, it's easier to social engineer the password from somebody by just asking them, targetedly in a spear phishing attempt, than to actually break and brute force the password.
Exactly.
So anyway, that's it now. We don't want to spread any more fake news. So like I said, join the WhatsApp group, and we're posting as much of the right information as possible. On my Facebook, I'm posting it, which you have to be a friend of mine for. But other than that, join the WhatsApp group, ask us. And when we hear more information next week, we'll hopefully get it to you. And we will then see you next week.
See you, everyone.
Bye.